Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the CFR training webinar for the 2022-23 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. We have a decent size crowd today with over 500 attendees, so hopefully we don't have any issues with the WebEx. Both of the webinar sessions will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you have a colleague that could not make it or you want to listen to training again, you will be able to. We will send an email out to all providers notifying them of when they are available and where they can be found. My name is Alpa Amin, a representative from OPWDD, and I will be the host for the two webinars we have scheduled this week. Today's NY State representative will be as follows. Representing OSS, Paul Green, Paul Sutton, Lisa Vickery. Representing OMH, Michelle Zelensky, Sean Griffin, and Hoffman. Representing OPWDD, Francis Vasillo, Kenneth Glinmeyer, Emily Stewart, and myself. Representing SED, Catherine Cochran, Mackenzie Bisler. Representing DOH, Jeffrey Nicholson. Also, we have a survey that will pop up at the end of the event. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey so that we can continue to make this training better each time. Session one will cover getting started, CFRS Web, core reporting schedule CFR 1 through schedule DMH 1. This slide is important, and hopefully you have had the opportunity to check out the previous Q&As that have been posted on the OMH website listed on the screen. We strongly encourage all attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function in the webinar. It is on your right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click the arrow next to the Q&A to open up the dialog box. If you don't see it, click the three dots at the bottom right of the WebEx and then click Q&A. We will not be answering questions today, but plan on answering all the questions and posting answer online, along with the recording of this webinar so that everyone can get the benefit of this webinar and questions asked. This is always good to know when you have a question. This slide shows how to contact each agency. Most of us are still working a hybrid in-office remote schedule, so all the agencies prefer email contact. New York State Office of Children and Family Service Provider may submit questions regarding their CFR submissions to the OMS CFR unit. New York State Department of Health Providers may submit questions regarding their CFR submission by email to DOH address listed on the slide. Any claim questions can go to the following. As noted on the previous slide, email would be the preferred method. By the end of this webinar, we hope to accomplish the following goals. Introduce providers to the CFR manual and CFRS Web, provide NYS agency contact information for specific questions not covered during this training session, help providers become familiar with the CFR core reports, discuss important policies, principles, and the rules regarding completion of the CFR. I will now pass on the presenting to our first panelist.
Thank you, Alpa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Vickery, and I work in the CFR unit at Oasis. The first step to getting started is to understand what the CFR is and where to find the guidance to complete it. The Consolidated Fiscal Report, or CFR, is required to be completed by providers that receive funding from or operate certified programs for any or all of the 6 New York State agencies. Providers should review the reporting instructions for each schedule and read the first 9 sections of the CFR manual to ensure a basic understanding of the CFR requirements. The manual has a separate section for each of the following: the core, claiming schedules, supplemental schedules, and appendix. The CFR manual and the appendices are available online at the SED webpage, and PDF files are available for download at the link provided. This is the SED webpage where you can find the transmittal letter, manual, and appendices that go back several reporting periods. 30-day extension requests can also be found here for OMH and SED providers. CFR training information is available at the SED and OMH websites. The year-end cost report documents the provider's expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the 6 New York State agencies. It is also referred to as the CFR Core Schedules and consists of Schedules CFR 1 through CFR 6 and DMH 1. The cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, cost of living increases, fiscal analysis, and policy development by the New York State agencies, the legislature, and the governor's office. The year-end claiming document is used to report expenses and revenues for providers that receive aid to localities funding through a direct contract with a Department of Mental Hygiene state agency and/or a local contract with a local government unit. The state aid claiming schedules are DMH-2 and DMH-3 and are the basis of your state aid and/or local contract payment. Schedules CFR 1 through CFR 6, DMH 1, and COVID-19/COVID-19S informational schedules must be reported using accrual accounting in accordance with U.S. Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, or U.S. GAAP. Schedules DMH-2 and DMH-3 may be completed on either accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Many abbreviated CFR filers may complete all the required schedules on either accrual, modified accrual, or the cash basis of accounting. The goal of accrual accounting is to account in the periods in which they occur the effects of transactions and other events and circumstances on an entity to the extent that these financial effects are recognizable and measurable. So basically, this means revenue is recognized and recorded when earned, regardless of when the payment is received. Expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred, regardless of when they are paid. Units of service are counted when provided. And salary expense is reported in the period incurred, not in the period the paycheck was issued. So keep in mind that the CFR may not match your quarterly payroll reports. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full, abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. Each CFR submission type contains different combinations of schedules and has slightly different rules governing the methods of accounting used on those schedules. The type of CFR a provider must complete depends on the type of program or programs operated and the amount and type of funding received from the CFR state agencies. To determine the type of CFR submission required, review the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR manual. When a provider is funded by more than one New York State agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all required CFR filings. For example, if a provider operates OPWDD programs that require an abbreviated CFR submission, but also operates OMH programs that require a full CFR submission, the most stringent reporting requirements apply and the provider must submit a full CFR. Section 2 of the CFR manual contains 5 matrices for determining the correct CFR submission type for your agency. This is the combination matrix for agencies that file a CFR that includes more than one New York State agency. To determine the correct CFR submission type to prepare, select the applicable matrix and answer a series of yes or no questions. Please note that Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. Section 2 also contains notes relating to New York State agency-specific reporting requirements and exceptions. The submission matrices change often and should be reviewed yearly. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023 fiscal reporting period, which generally includes the 5 New York City boroughs. Out-of-state providers should contact their respective New York State agency's CFR unit to determine their standard reporting period. All programs operating during this time period should be reported on this CFR. If your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded on a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional mini-abbreviated CFR may be required for the non-standard filing period, and you would be considered a dual filer. The additional CFR will use the reporting period specified by the contract as per New York codes, rules, and regulations. The most common off-cycle contracts are for special legislative grants, also known as member items. For example, a provider whose corporate headquarters is in Manhattan and operates programs in both Manhattan and Westchester County, they must submit their primary CFR on the standard reporting period of July 1 through June 30. The provider completes the CFR detailing expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time period, including the Westchester County programs. They must also submit a secondary mini-abbreviated CFR on the January 1 through December 31 reporting period for the programs funded by Westchester County only. Additional reporting requirements can be found on pages 3.1 to 3.2 of the CFR manual. For OMH and SED providers, the due date for the July 1 to June 30th CFR is November 1st. OMH and SED providers may request a 30-day extension before November 1st using the link on the SED website. For OASIS, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, the due date is December 1st. Please note that the New York State agencies will not be responsible for any loss of state aid resulting from noncompliance with the required deadlines or late amendments. To ensure compliance in submitting accurate CFRs and the required supporting documents, each New York State agency can impose sanctions or penalties on the provider. The imposition of sanctions or penalties may include, but is not limited to, withholding of advanced payments and, ultimately, termination of state aid, suspension, limitation, or revocation of the operating certificate, notification of noncompliance to DOH for Medicaid providers. The agency-specific sections of the presentation will go into more detail. If your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county and/or New York City for their specific requirements regarding the CFR and final claim submissions. Local government units may require a submission due date earlier than the New York State agency prescribed due date. The New York State Agency CFR requirements are the minimal requirements regarding CFR submissions. Local government unit requirements can be stricter but cannot be more lenient. Sending copies of the certification schedules to the county or local DDRO does not fulfill your requirement with the state agencies. CFRs must be prepared and submitted using CFRS Web. The link below is posted on the OMH website. In addition to the submission of the CFR, the certification pages, agency financial statements, and parent agency allocation backup data should be uploaded through CFRS Web. Instructions on uploading certification pages through CFRS Web will be discussed later in the presentation. Please do not mail paper copies of the CFR core schedules, which are CFR 1 through DMH 1, to the New York State Agency CFR units in Albany. First of all, it is costly to you, and secondly, we don't use them and they go into the recycle bin. CFRS Web is the preferred method of uploading certifications. Once uploaded, all the respective New York State agencies will have access to them. OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED will continue to accept email PDF copies of all required certifications. OMH, OPWDD, and SED will also accept paper copies of the applicable certification schedules by mail. DOH and OCFS will only accept certifications that are electronically uploaded through CFRS Web. Certification schedules with an electronic signature must be submitted through CFRS Web. When a revised CFR is submitted, a provider is required to upload revised certifications complete with the new DCN number as follows. For OASIS, a new CFR-I, CFR-IIIA, CFR-III, and CFR-IV are required. However, subsequent to a CFR-IIIA being received, OASIS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of an additional CFR-IIIA. SED and OPWDD, a new CFR-I and CFR-IIIA is required. OMH, DOH, and OCFS, a new CFR-I is required. OPWDD note, a new certified CFR-I and CFR-IIIA, if required with the original CFR submission, is required. Only CPA-certified CFRs will be utilized for calculation of OPWDD reimbursement levels or any other initiative that utilizes the CFR for calculation of funding or reimbursement. Providers may submit revised CFRs and/or certification schedules in CFRS Web that have not been certified in compliance with other agencies' requirements. However, OPWDD's CFR unit will not accept them without certification. These are examples of the proper naming structure for emailed copies to OASIS and OPWDD. OMH and SED do not require a specific file name. It is preferred that consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, be uploaded electronically as PDF files through CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should also be uploaded if available. Providers that are required to have a single audit based on the uniform guidance and the compliance supplement must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding New York State agency via CFRS Web. More information on the federal audit requirements can be found at the link provided. For each fiscal period, financial statements need only be uploaded once unless there is a significant change. We cannot accept draft financial statements, so please do not upload them. Many abbreviated CFRs are not required to submit financial statements. Prior period financial statements can also be uploaded through CFRS Web. It is preferred that CPA audited financial statements correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, submit the financial statements with an end of cycle date that falls within the CFR reporting period. For example, if your agency's audited financial statements end December 31st, 2022, you would submit them with your 22-23 CFR. It is recommended that the audited and certified financial statements include the prior year's data in the presentation of the balance sheet and income statement or comparably labeled schedule. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Salary allocations between different programs and/or job functions should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against approved budgets. Internal financial reporting systems should be structured to capture the cost categories included in the CFR. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis. Program descriptions and unit of service definitions can be found in Appendices E, F, G, H, HH, and II. Non-allowable costs should be tracked on a regular basis for easy identification when preparing the CFR. A list of some, but not all, non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X. A cost must be reasonable and/or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether the costs incurred in rendering the services are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the organization and the restraints or requirements imposed by federal and state laws and regulations. Providers operating DMH programs should refer to Appendix X of the CFR Manual for a list of some, but not all, non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of CFR schedules, CFR 1, CFR 2, CFR 3, DMH 1, and DMH 2 must be reported on the adjustments or non-allowable cost line of the applicable schedules. The following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out of the reported costs. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afford diversion, amusement, or entertainment to owners, operators, or employees. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Costs resulting from violations of or failure to comply with federal, state, and local government laws, rules, and regulations. Costs of training afforded staff that does not directly relate to the fulfillment of the required duties. Please note that expenses which are acceptable per GAAP or the IRS may or may not be reimbursable. Related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's individual's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the goods or services supplied. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed and detailed on Schedule CFR 5. All excess related party transaction costs, as defined above, included as an expense on any line of any CFR schedule, must be reported on the adjustments non-allowable cost line of the applicable CFR schedule. If you are unsure whether your agency has related party transactions, check your financial statements. Fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of reported costs on the applicable CFR schedule. Non-allowable fringe benefits include but are not limited to the Supplemental Executive Retirement Plans, or SERP, or any non-qualified deferred compensation plan subject to IRC subsection 457F. The New York State CFR state agencies require that consolidated budget reports, CBRs, and consolidated fiscal reports, CFRs, be completed and submitted using CFRS Web. All New York State agencies and their programs are to be reported on one consolidated CFR. CFRS Web requires entry of agency information and program site information. Only program codes and funding source codes valid for the CFR reporting period can be used. CFRS Web must be used for all new CFR submissions beginning with the fiscal year 21-22 CFR and any revisions to prior period CFRs. Previous submissions retroactive to calendar year 2012 are available to view and edit. Signature pages will continue to be uploaded through CFRS Web. For guidance in navigating CFRS Web or for assistance with data input, contact the New York State Agency's CFR unit your programs are associated with. CFRS Web also has a help function on the menu. Users should be able to complete most tasks using the information found. If the CFRS Web application is not responding or requires technical assistance, contact the New York State Office of Information Technology Services at either the telephone number or email address below. To receive notifications regarding updates and changes to CFRS Web, subscribe to the CFRS Web announcement list from the OMH website at the link provided. It is recommended that more than one staff member subscribe to the announcement list. Announcements will also be posted on the announcement board on the home page of CFRS Web. User access to CFRS Web must be authorized by the agency's security manager. The security manager can assign a CFRS Web role to fiscal staff involved in reviewing, preparing, or submitting CFRs and CBRs. If you are unsure what role was assigned to you, click on your username at the upper right of the screen. A different set of permissions is associated with each role. If a different level of access is needed, the user should contact the security manager at the provider agency. A provider is encouraged to establish an additional security manager if so desired. The possible user roles are as follows. The reviewer can view all submitted and in-progress documents. However, they do not have data entry or document submission permission. The preparer can view all submitted and in-progress documents and enter and update data. However, they do not have document submission permission. The submitter can view all submitted and in-progress documents and enter and update data. They can also submit documents in the application. User roles graduate in the ability to perform functions. The most basic role of reviewer can review only, followed by the role of preparer, which can prepare as well as review, followed by the role of submitter, which can review, prepare, and submit CFRs and CBRs. Providers can have the same role assigned to multiple users. For example, having multiple users designated as submitter may be useful in meeting filing deadlines. To add an external user, such as a CPA or fiscal person who will retain the same user ID for multiple providers, follow these instructions. Ask the user if there is an existing user ID with a different agency, their primary agency. If there is an existing user ID, send an email request to your New York State Agency's CFR unit requesting that they add this user to your agency and provide the following: the name of the user ID for their primary agency, your agency code, and the CFR role to be assigned to the CPA or fiscal person. Once the above noted information is provided to your state agency's CFR unit, the request will be processed and the results relayed directly to the user. This concludes my section of the presentation. I will now hand the microphone to our next speaker. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Francis Vasilio. I'm in the CFR unit at OPWDD. We're going to take you through the first steps of using CFRS Web. When you, Lisa a moment ago mentioned the announcement board. When you first enter CFRS Web, you will see at the top of the screen the announcement board. We'll post notices there. For instance, this September, when you're all anxious to start your 22-23 CFR and you don't know whether the programming has been modified to allow for that, there'll be a notice posted on this board when you can start that cycle. Until then, you can go in at any time to work on a previously submitted CFR if amendments are required. Underneath that announcement board, there are 4 sections on that home page. You see the 4 sections there. You see some are in gold and the one is in gray. That depends on the role that you were assigned. For instance, if you were only given review, the review role, then the other options will be grayed out and you won't be able to go in and create or revise the CFR. If you have the submitter role, you can do everything that's available. If you need to create a new CFR, it's recommended that you're going to use the information, some of the information that was available from the last period CFR that you submitted. And you're going to choose the Create New CFR button, and you're going to be asked what type of CFR it's going to be for this period. You mark full or abbreviated, whatever the case may be. You have to check in the boxes which state agencies are funding programs in the CFR. You check what reporting cycle is applicable and what reporting period. You're asked a question: would you like to carry forward data from a prior submission? You say yes or no, and you proceed from there. Then you hit the next button. If you said no, then you're going to be taken to the provider agency definition screen, where you're going to be asked to fill in a lot of information about your agency. This is a more difficult way to do things because you could just as easily have brought forward information like this from a previous CFR. If you chose yes, then you are going to bring forward information from last year's CFR. It'll bring it forward from the most recently filed CFR from that reporting period. So you have a choice. You can choose which reporting period you want to bring data forward from. Normally, you're going to choose the previous year. You would check the little circle there on the left that's what you want to do. you're going to be asked questions. You can either bring forward all the data from that previous CFR, which include all the expenses that were entered, all the personal services that were paid, et cetera, or you can choose master data only. This is what most people do. This will give you information, the standard work week and the job titles in each program. It includes all the programs that were in the previous CFR. It'll have the addresses where those programs are cited. This is the normal way to do things. It minimizes errors. It's the way we would recommend that you normally do it. Some people who are filing many abbreviated CFRs with maybe one or two contracts may want to bring forward all data because it's easy enough just to type over with the new dollar amounts for this reporting period. You may get a warning message like this. Suppose you went through and you forgot to check the box for one of the state agencies that was included in the previous year's CFR. In that case, you're getting this warning message because the new one you're about to create is going to completely omit that other state agency and all the programs that was funded. So if that was an error on your part, you can hit the back button. If it is what you intended to do, you can hit the forward button. You'll get a notice either way when the carry forward is complete, which means you've now created a new CFR for the reporting period that you're going to start completing. One thing that, regardless of what you check in the previous, about the previous reporting period and what data you're bringing forward, you always have to go in and re-enter the beginning date and the ending date of the CFR or of the financial statement. You choose the little calendar, which is in yellow off to the end of that line. Kind of looks more like a lunchbox to me, but in any case, that calendar, you pull it up and you choose the month, the year, and the day on which that financial statement begins. You'll repeat that process for the closing date of the CFO, of the financial statement. Now, if from one year to the next you have changes in the programs that you operate, it may be something as simple as you're changing the site name for something, in which case you've got that list there of all the programs that are included in the new CFR you created. You can hit that pencil and you can make editing changes to the description there. If you're no longer operating a program that you did operate in the previous year, you'd hit the little garbage can off to the right and to delete that line. If you've got a new program that wasn't included in last year's CFR, then you hit the Add a Program button. You're going to choose which state agency operates it there at the top or funds it. Then the next line for program, there's a down arrow. You hit that and it'll give you a list of all the programs operated by that state agency. You would choose the one that applies, and then you would proceed to complete the information about that program that's new for your agency. You're going to have the address of where it's operated, and you're going to have a site code for that program, etc. Now, one key thing is while you're working on a CFR, whether it's amending or creating for the first time, only one person from your agency can be working on that CFR file at the same time. And if there's somebody else from your agency that needs to get in to enter separate data, some agencies have one person entering payroll, while another enters expenses off the ledger. If one person is in there and then they go out to lunch, or even worse, they go off on a long weekend and they haven't closed out, after 30 minutes of inactivity, the CFR will close out that usage by that first person so that somebody else can get in. So if you went to lunch and then you come back and you want to get back in again, you're going to, and you've already created this new CFR, or you started amending a CFR that needed some work done on it, then you're going to choose View in Progress CFRs. And you're going to choose to continue submission, the option to continue submission and upload completed CFRs. That'll take you to where you can choose which one's as a work in progress. You see the status to the right side of the screen. You can have one person working on a new one for the next reporting period, and another person working on amending an older CFR at the same time. It's just that you can't have two people in the same CFR file simultaneously. To continue, you go to the Continue Submission and Upload CFR. You have two options. One is to view the submission, in which case you won't be able to make any changes. The other is to edit the submission, in case you are wanting to go in there and continue making changes to the file. If you've gone into a submission that was in the work in progress, you'll get this warning that tells you nobody else will be able to get in there while you're editing, and that's normally what you want anyway. After you agree to that, you have different options here. On the second line of yellow boxes, you can continue the edit, which is what you want to do if you're not finished making your amendment. You can stop the edit, in which case that'll allow a coworker to get in and do their job work. Or if for some reason you want to delete the submission, you can do that. That's a dangerous thing to do, because once it's gone, it's gone. If you choose to continue to edit, it takes you it starts you off at CFRI, and then you can use the menu to get to whatever schedule you need to go to. Just a pointer, when you are creating new CFRs or even amending CFRs, always make sure that that contact information in the CFRI is still accurate, because email addresses change, different people are working at the agency. You want to make sure that we have the best contact information available. If you chose Stop Edit, you get this confirmation that says you're going to be exiting the file and somebody else can get in there. If you choose to delete, we're going to give you the warning. You're really, really, really sure you want to do this, because it's a big step to take, and there's not many cases where you're going to ever want to do that. But if you do it, and you can only delete a submission that has not been submitted. Once they're submitted, they're in the CFRS Web database forever. But if it's a work in progress, even if it's got a DCN assigned but you haven't submitted, it is possible to go in and get rid of it. I guess if two of you at different days were both starting one for, well, no, that wouldn't be able to work. You can't have two CFRs for the same reporting period. So again, there are very few times when you're going to want to go in and delete a submission. So in that status column, you see 3 different examples there. 2 of them are just work in progress. The third one says a DCN was assigned. That means it went through the validation, had a DCN assigned, but it was never submitted to the state agencies in Albany. That might be something you do, and then you have your CPA go in and look at it before you submit it. That's up to you how you want to handle that part of it. If you choose to go into the DCN assigned and not yet submitted, you have 3 buttons there at the bottom. You can view that submission, you can edit it further, or you can submit that DCN. Now, if you choose edit, you're going to get a warning that you are going to lose that DCN that was assigned and you have to revalidate. This is that warning that you'll get because there was already a DCN assigned, but you chose to edit it. You can say yes or no whether you really want to do that. Maybe you just wanted to really go in and view it. You could say no and back up. If you will say yes, you can go in and make further changes to that CFR. If you choose to submit the CFR, you're not uploading anymore, because once you submit, then that work that's in CFRS Web then becomes filed with the state agencies, and the state agency staff can begin reviewing it. You can also get to the submit submission off the utilities from the main menu. However, you've got to go into the file for that CFR before you go to that main menu to get that option to be able to submit. Also, if you don't have submitter status, you won't be able, that will either be grayed out or not even visible. Only people with submitter status can submit a CFR. Only people with submitter status can upload financial statements, certifications, parent agency allocation information. Now, in the past, with the old desktop version of CFR, you would get an email back if you once you uploaded your CFR. Now, what you get is just a notice will appear on your screen after you submit it. Tells you it was successfully submitted. And you can go back to the submission dashboard, and you'll see that it says it's now listed as it's no longer a work in progress. It now joins all the other past CFRs that have been submitted to the state agencies. Now, if you go to review or revise CFRs, you can go in. Let's say you've submitted a CFR, it's been reviewed, you got a review letter from one of the state agencies. You can go in to review or revise CFR to go in and make any changes that are necessary. When you go in there, all the previously uploaded CFRs dating back to 2012 are listed. So if one of the agencies wants you to go back and make a correction from 2 or 3 years ago, that's possible. You choose the one that you want to grab. Now, when you're doing the search, this one's set for CFR only. You could also have budget only if that's what you're working on, or you could choose to have both highlighted, you see on the screen, and it'll give you that list of all those CFRs that have been submitted. Now, once you choose a reporting period, all the different DCNs that were uploaded for that reporting period will appear on the screen. in this case, you have two of them which were identical, and you have a third one there that actually had a different, an additional state agency as included in the CFR. I don't know what the story is about that. Maybe they had left out an OPWDD program and had to go back in and add it in during that period. And you get the submit date on the far right. You can have two CFRs for the same reporting period if one's a full and one's a mini. That happens occasionally. It's not a normal thing. After selecting the CFR that you want to work with, you can either view it or you can choose to revise it. And once you do that, you get this warning that if you're revising a CFR that was already a DCN that was submitted, you're going to block out anybody else from getting into that one. Again, the CFR program won't allow you to have two work-in-progress CFRs for the same reporting period that have the same state agencies that are both full CFRs. So you see here, there are two different that are listed, but they're for different reporting periods. Now, if you go into review or revise and upload documents, you can't upload a financial statement or any certs until you've uploaded at least one CFR for that reporting period. In the past, we used to get sometimes a financial statement before the CFR. You can't do that anymore. And the way it works now is once you've uploaded the CFR, then you can go in and upload the financial statement. You can go in and upload the certification and anything else that is required for that CFR. You go in, and it's pretty similar to the old desktop. You go in, you say you are going to, you choose a CFR you want to upload documentation for. And then you can pick what you're uploading, whether it's a CFRI. By the way, you can check CFRI, CFRII, CFRIII, all three at the same time and give us one scan with all three of those. You don't have to do each page of the CFR separately. Another thing to remind you is that you're supposed to give us, the CFRII is now 3 pages long. You're supposed to give us all 3 pages, not just the page that the CPA signature appears on. It's the same for the financial statements. You check. Now, you can't, the same swoop, give us the financial statement and the certifications, but you can do multiple pages of the certification altogether. If you're going to be giving us a certification that was docu-signed or electronic signature, you have to check this box, and then you're agreeing, basically you're swearing that this is all on the up and up. That's the only way you're allowed to give us electronic signatures on certifications is through the CFR program. We said earlier you could email certifications to us. That does not apply to CFRs that are with electronic signatures. Now you see at the bottom of the screen, you're getting a confirmation that you were successfully uploaded that certification page. And it'll now appear, if you go in and to a reporting period, you'll see the list of all the certificate or all the CFRs that have been uploaded for the period. And underneath that is support. You'll see uploaded documents. You click on that, and you'll be able to see different certifications that were uploaded, if the financial statement was uploaded. Another thing, where you're getting people uploading the financial statement over and over again every time they file an amended CFR, that is not necessary. The only time you would upload a financial statement for a second time is if the CPA made changes to the financial statement, which again is very rare. So again, you would repeat that process. Before we did the certification, now we're uploading the financial statement. You're checking using that little calendar, the orange box there, to list what the end date of the financial statement is. Now you see here, in this case, when you check the uploaded documents that went along with this reporting period, you'll see here it says that if you look off to the right there down towards the bottom, you see the DCN for each of those certifications that were uploaded and also the financial statement. Again, you only need to give us one financial statement, even though it has a DCN associated with it. That's just the first one that you uploaded for that reporting period. That's fine. Another mistake people are making is not giving us the CFR IV, and we spend a lot of time after the deadline contacting people to tell them they forgot to do that. It's a separate button to upload that scan of that IV, so don't forget to do that. I said at the beginning that there were 4 boxes. There were create a new CFR, there was go to the work in progress, there was also review and revise CFR. The 4th box there is for helpful links. And you can either choose to, you can choose one of those if you need to. You can go to one of them takes you to the New York State Education Department, where we have manuals for multiple reporting periods available, along with the appendices in case you need to look something up. Another link takes you to the OMH website, where you can also get information. Got a list of contact information. And that's the end of my section. And so now I'm going to hand you off to the next presenter.
Good morning. My name is Paul Green. I'm with the New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports. So welcome to all for coming. Now that you're in the CFR, you're going to use the menu button in order to navigate throughout the schedules. Okay. The menu icon is found in the top left corner of any page in the CFRS Web. Once selected, the expanded menu will be visible on the left side of the screen. This is the order, the recommended order of completion of schedules. It doesn't have to be followed. You can jump around from one to another, but you just must understand that until you've completed the feeder schedule, it may not appear in the schedule you're working on at the time. Okay. Currently, the gold line in the menu indicates your place in the order of schedules to be completed. Use the menu to navigate through the completion of multiple menus and submenus. Once a schedule is complete, use the previous schedule or next schedule buttons located at the bottom of the page to navigate between the schedules. Okay. Currently, the gold line is under provider agency definition. To complete the provider agency definition screen, you will need the following information about your agency. This is all information that you've put in previously. This is where you're going to put it in. Now, if you have transferred information from a prior CFR, then the information may all be here, okay? But everything that's there will need to be reviewed for accuracy. Sometimes email addresses change and things to that effect. And as Francis mentioned earlier, the certified financial statement period start date and end date, that will always have to be entered. That will never transfer in, okay? And that's going to be important to put that in there when you're getting to the certification. After the agency information is the program site definition information. The following information will be required regarding your agency's program sites, type of programs you operate, which agencies you're dealing with, the 4-digit program code, the 2-digit index code, program site identification, which is a site code, or as OASIS calls it, the PRU, physical address of each program site, and the county in which each defined program site operates. Next on the menu is the certification schedules, CFRI, IIIA, III, and IV. Now, not all of these are required with every CFR, okay? Refer to Section 2 of the CFR manual to know which ones go with which. And again, when it comes down to it, the preferred method of submitting these completed signature pages is the electronic submission. Okay. Here's a screenshot of the CFRI. Again, the information has been transferred in, but it needs to be checked for accuracy. The contact courtesy title, contact first name, contact last name. So the contact person is generally the person that knows the most about the CFR. So if we have a question, that's who we're going to contact first. There's also the Chief Executive Officer, who's responsible for signing for the CFR. There's a president of the board. There's information on there. President, chair of the board. And then there's the claims contact information. If you have state aid from OASIS, OMH, or OPWDD, you'll need to complete a claim, and in order to do that, you'll need claims contact information. The easiest way to fill this in is just to click on Copy Contact button, which will take all the contact information previously put in and move it down to here. If you wish to change it, you can. Under each category, there is a checkbox. Please check the box if the president/chair board of directors change from the prior reporting period. Okay. Once you've completed that, you select Next Schedule. This is a summary. The CFRI is required for all submissions and must be signed by the executive director/CEO. If it's signed by anybody else, it may not be accepted. The CFRI requires contact information for the agency's fiscal contact and president, chair of the board of directors. It should be uploaded via CFRS Web. Once you do that, it will be distributed to all the agencies that are noted on the CFR. And the signed schedule must have the same DCN number as the submitted CFR. Next is the CFR IIIA. Again, the information will transfer in, but should be checked in case you've changed accountants. Date CFR signed. The CFR IIIA, it's required for most full CFRs, signed by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner, or CPA firm. CFR IIIA should be uploaded through CFRS Web. Should have the same DCN number as a CFR submitted. Okay, so it's of no value to us if the accountant is signing off on one DCN number and the executive director is signing off on another DCN number. Adhere to audit examination guidelines in Appendix AA of the CFR manual. Now, what is the difference between the II and the II? CFR II, when the period covered by the general purpose financial statements corresponds to the CFR reporting period. So if they're both calendar year, then a CFR II will print. If the period covered by the general purpose financial statement differs from the CFR reporting period, then it's a CFR II-A. So if your financials are calendar year and your CFR is fiscal year, it'll be a CFR II-A. Okay. Counties have the option. Counties and other municipalities have three options. They can submit the II, II-A, or a compliance review. And a compliance review is outlined in Appendix CC of the CFR manual. CFR III is for providers that receive state funding. If you are rate-based programs not receiving state-based, not receiving state aid, you do not need to complete a CFR III. If funded through a direct contract, the executive director must sign the left side of the certification statement designated for voluntary local service provider. If funded through a local county contract, the left side of the certification must be signed by the executive director, and the right side of the certification statement must be signed by the county director of community mental health services. Counties that operate programs and submit a CFR III, they must sign the middle section of the certification by the county treasurer and the far right side by the section by the director of community mental health services. It should be uploaded to CFRS Web, should have the same DCN number, and finally, if you're the executive director, do not wait for county signatures of the CFR III prior to submission. At the same time that you're sending it to the county for their signature, send it directly to the state agency. We'd like to get it as soon as possible. Okay. CFR IV. CFR IV is a series of questions regarding the fiscal status of the agency. They are yes, no, or not applicable questions. They are required, and as Francis said, some of the agencies require it for each CFR submitted. Some of the agencies do not. You can refer to Section 2 of the manual to tell you which is which, or you can just submit it for each agency. CFR IV is very important to us. It's used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement for the service provider's chief executive officer, attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document. So the big difference here is under penalty of perjury. So there is importance to this, and it must be submitted. Note, the CFR IV schedule is not required for SED-only CFR filers, governmental service providers, or mini-abbreviated CFRs. And now I will hand the microphone off to the next speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. CFR 4, Personal Services. CFR 4 is a two-tab data entry screen. The first tab is Program Site, Program Administration, LGU Administration, and the second tab is Agency Administration. If you are completing the Program Site tab, select a state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. If you transfer data from a prior period, some rows may be pre-populated. If you wish to create a new row of data, select Add a Line. Next, select the desired physician title code from the drop-down box. enter the standard work week, aggregate total hours paid, and amount paid for all individuals working in the specified position title code. Repeat the same steps for each additional position title code. CFRS Web will calculate the FTEs to 3 decimal places. In order to delete an entire row of data, click on the trash can icon located in the desired row. New for the 22 calendar year CFR reporting period and subsequent reporting periods is the CFR4 informational only section. This informational only section is optional. This informational only section includes overtime hours included in the total hours paid, overtime amount included in total amount paid, average hourly rate, and annualized salary. Located at the far right of the screen is a total for the program site reporting for each position title code sharing the same standard work week. The column headers are as follows: state agency total for all programs, total hours paid, FTE, total amount paid. To complete the Agency Administrative Personal Services, select the Agency Administration tab and follow the same process. Only 600 series position title codes are available for use. Only personal services related to employees of your agency are reported on the schedule. Individuals who receive W-2s are considered to be employees. A separate Schedule CFR4 is completed for the Agency Administration Personal Service expenses of your entire agency, position title codes 600 to 699. 100% of the amounts paid for agency administration staff must be reported. The CFR4 is included in all CFR submission types. New York State agency-specific and shared program-specific CFR4s are prepared for staff providing program services. Agency administration staff is reported in a single column on a separate Schedule CFR4. All agency administration staff is reported in this column regardless of the size of the New York State agency programs in relation to the total agency. Individuals receiving 1099 tax forms are considered to be independent contractors. Position title codes are listed in Appendix R. The positions are functional titles and may not match the corporate titles used by your agency. Position title codes may be specific to New York State agencies or program types. For example, position title code 211 will not be an option in the drop-down list for an OPWD program. The 100 level position title codes are support staff, 200 level direct care staff, 300 level clinical staff, 400 level production staff, 500 level program administration staff, 600 level agency administration staff, 700 level local government unit staff only. Direct care and clinical staff hours are a key component of the rate rationalization process for OPWDD. Please be sure to give your staff the appropriate codes. The standard work week must be at least 35 hours, but no more than 45 hours per week. The hours paid, FTEs, and amount paid totals are shown by column. Where applicable, employees' hours and salaries paid should be allocated between programs and/or position titles. This is the calculation of FTEs. It's the hours paid divided by the standard work week times 52. This is an example of the FTE calculation for a position where the standard full-time work week is 35 hours per week and the employee worked 22.5 hours a week for 40 weeks during the fiscal year. This example shows the calculation of the FTE and represents the most complicated calculation, a less than full-time employee who worked for less than a full year. CFRS Web does all the calculations for you. The totals of the CFR 4 input carry forward to CFR 1, line 16 for full CFRs, CFR 3, line 1 for full CFRs, DMH 1, line 6 for abbreviated, and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs. CFR 4A, contracted direct care and clinical personal services. This schedule is used to report the amount paid to individuals or organizations that have contracted with the service provider to provide direct care and/or clinical personal services. All other contracted services must be reported on the appropriate expense line of the CFR 1 or CFR 3. It's the same data entry process as CFR 4, except the input of the standard work week is not required. Direct care hours, position title codes 200, 299, and clinical hours, position title codes 300 to 399, are an important part of OPWD's rate rationalization formula. Be sure to report an accurate total for contracted hours in the CFR 4A. Only contracted direct care and clinical staff positions are reported on the schedule. Contracted staff includes those individuals that are not issued a W-2 by the provider agency. As with CFR 4, the position title codes are found in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Report hours paid and amount paid. The hours paid field cannot be left blank. The total direct care and clinical personal services carries forward to CFR 1, line 35. CFR 4A is only included in full CFR submission types. If contracted staff are not paid by the hour, an estimate of hours paid must be made. Entries of 0 or 1 hour will generally not be accepted. Questions regarding whether or not an individual is a contractor or an employee should be directed to the IRS, the service provider's accountant, and/or tax attorney. CFR 1, Program Site Data General Information. CFR 1 is a 3-tab data entry screen: General Information, Expenses, and Revenues. To enter program site data, select a state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. Gray fields are non-enterable. Data is populated from a different schedule or screen. Data on lines 1 through 6 and 8 carries forward from the program site definition screen. For Medicaid eligible programs, report both the Medicaid Provider Agreement number on line 7A and the National Provider ID number on line 7B. Both numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. CFR 1 is only included in full CFR submission types. CFR 1 is a state agency specific, program site shared program specific schedule. Program site data line 13, units of service. It is critical that units of service delivered during the reporting period are captured, counted, and reported accurately and correctly. Inaccurate units of service reported is cause for rejection of submitted CFRs. It is expected that providers will train staff regarding the appropriate measurement of units of service for the program types they operate. See appendices E, F, G, H, HH, and II. Ensure that information is recorded at the time the service is delivered, and make the data available in the format of the CFR. For OASIS programs, Units of service reported in the CFR must match the units of service reported to the OASIS monthly service delivery system, the period covered by the CFR. OMH programs. OMH units of service carry forward from OMH1. There'll be more on the OMH1 schedule later. The units of service reported are accrued based on the date of service, not the date of payment. All units of service provided must be reported, including those for which no payment was received. Section 13 of the CFR manual and Schedule CFR1 were updated as follows. Line 13, total units of service is the calculated total of the following lines. 13A, Medicaid fee-for-service units of service. 13B, Medicaid managed care units of service. 13C, all other units of service. Refer to page 13.5 of the CFR manual for additional guidance. Okay. Program site data expenses. There are more expense lines than can be displayed on one screen. Use the scroll bar on the right side of the screen to access the lines not displayed. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Personal services expenses were carried forward to line 16 from CFR 4. These are the expense categories: personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services, equipment, property, and agency administration, which is allocated from Schedule CFR 3. Line 16, personal services, carried forward from Schedule CFR 4. Line 17, vacation leave accruals. Report the increase or decrease in vacation accruals from the previous year. Line 18, mandated fringe benefits, includes FICA, Medicare, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, New York State disability, and New York State family leave. Line 19, non-mandated fringe benefits, includes health insurance, dental insurance, and pensions. Line 22, repairs and maintenance, includes costs for maintenance and minor repairs, as well as contracts for housekeeping, garbage, and snow removal. Line 26, participant incidentals, includes costs associated with participant entertainment, recreation, summer camps, clothing. Line 28, expensed equipment, the cost of all program, site, and/or program administration, non-adaptive equipment purchased during the cost report period with a value of less than $5,000 or a useful life of less than 2 years. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for more information regarding how equipment is reported in the CFR. Line 35, contracted direct care and clinical personal services. This is carried forward from Schedule CFR 4A. Line 36, supplies and materials, non-household, includes costs for program supplies, medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, computer software. Line 39, insurance general. The insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional and medical malpractice, vehicle, or other insurance costs related to program site and program administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Okay, the other lines. The OTPS, equipment and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. This is an example of the line detail box example for line 40, the other line. Data input for lines with a line detail box icon can only be entered by clicking on the icon to the right of the line. Line detail boxes are customized to meet specific New York State agency needs with predefined item descriptions. Additional item descriptions can be added by clicking Add a Line and typing in the new description. Be specific in your description. Data entered in the line detail box is totaled, and the details are shown on the worksheet detail section of the CFR. Do not report items on line 40, OTPS Other, that should be reported on a specifically defined line. Two examples of items reported on CFR 1 line 40, which should have been reported on predefined lines, are copying, printing, and postage of $1,227 should be reported on line 36, supplies and materials, non-household. Rubbish removal for $3,999 should be reported on line 22, repairs and maintenance. Bad debt expense. Bad debt should be reported on the appropriate schedule as follows. CFR 1, line 40, and also adjusted out as non-allowable on line 66. CFR 2, column 9, line 4, and also adjusted out as non-allowable on line 8. CFR 3, line 17, and also adjusted out as non-allowable on line 41. Refer to the FAQ on page 8.13 of the CFR manual for further guidance. Certain assets are depreciated. Line 44, vehicle. Line 45, equipment. Line 51, building. Line 52, building and land improvements. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. See Appendix O of the CFR manual for guidance on capitalization and depreciation. Group purchases of like items should be treated as a single purchase. Group purchases of unlike items should be treated as if each item was purchased individually. Telephone systems and computer systems should be treated as a group purchase. Adjustments and non-allowable costs. Line 66. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR 1 in the line detail box. Negative numbers cannot be entered in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5. This is the screenshot for line 66 with a detail box. The line number refers to where the individual expense is originally reported and is being adjusted out as non-allowable. Okay. OPWD only informational. OPWD only informational lines F and G are for reporting phase 1 of the workforce stabilization, and lines H and I are for reporting phase 2 of the workforce stabilization. Line 68, A, B, D, E, F, G, H, and I will be discussed during the OPWD HC specific section. Revenues. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Line 69, participant fees. Report revenues received from program participants in excess of SSI and SSA, self-pay. Line 72A, Medicaid fee for service, a revenue category representing payments received for services to eligible participants under the combined federal and state program, which pays for medical care for those who cannot afford it, regardless of age. Line 72B, Medicaid managed care, a delivery system of Medicaid health benefits and additional services through contracted arrangements between state Medicaid agencies and managed care organizations that accept a set per member per month payment for these services. Other third parties. The revenue from private health insurance coverage, which includes but is not limited to Blue Cross, HMOs, and other insurance carriers. Federal grants. Report grant revenues received directly from an administering federal government agency in support of the service providers programs. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: various U.S. departments, agriculture, education, health and human services, justice, labor, housing and urban development. CFRS Web has been modified to include predefined entries for Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance, Federal Emergency Management Agency grants. Do not include federal grant revenue received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, DOH, and OCFS as aid to localities funding. For the PPP, report only the amount of the PPP loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt. Additional lines are available by use of the Add a Line button in CFRS Web. Line 80, state grants. Report grant revenues received from New York State agencies other than the CFR reporting agencies. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: the Department of Health, Labor, Transportation, Division of Criminal Justice Services, Housing and Community Renewal, Parole, Veterans Affairs, and the Office of Children and Family Services. This does not include monies received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and or SED, and does not include aid to localities funding received from OASIS, OMH, and or OPWD. Instead, those monies would be reported as net deficit funding on line 93. Line 82, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. Report food-related revenues. This is for OASIS and OPWD programs only. Line 83, gifts, legacies, bequests, donations. Report the monetary contribution revenue derived from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations. Non-monetary donations or contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation if the schedule is required. Please see the FAQ in section 8.0 of the CFR manual for additional details. Line 86, prior period rate adjustments. Report the revenue from a rate appeal, rate adjustment, or retroactive contingency contracts. Do not include net deficit funding amounts on this line. For SED, report any reconciliation adjustments from a prior period, including any reconciliation tuition adjustments included as part of the prospective tuition rate. This is not applicable to OASIS and OMH service providers. OPWD, Medicaid recoveries should also be reported on this line. Lines 93 and 103, net deficit funding. These are funds received by the LGU from a DMH state agency and passed on to the service provider. Includes funds received directly from a DMH state agency via direct contract, funds received directly from the funding LGU. Line 94, other revenue. Some examples include, for OASIS, closely allied entity revenue. For OMH, safety net payments, vital access providers Medicaid revenue. And for OPWD, assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWD state paid. Line 97, provision for bad debts, a revenue deduction. Report the provision for bad debts as a deduction from revenue provided the revenue was not reported net of the provision for bad debts. The presentation of the provision for bad debts on the CFR should be consistent with the presentation on the provider's audited income statement. If the entity recognizes revenue to the extent that it expects to collect the amount, then bad debts related to the receivables from patient service revenue are reported as an expense on the CFR. Refer to the FAQ on page 8.13 in the CFR manual. And the revenues, other lines. The revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenues categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items of $1,000 or more. Individual items less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I will pass this on to our next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate and I work in the rate setting unit for the New York State Education Department. My presentation will be on the CFR2, CFR2A, and CFR3. As you can see on your screen is a CFR2 agency fiscal summary. This is on page 31 of the sample you received. The CFR2 captures the expenses and revenues for the entire agency. Totals for each New York State agency are displayed in separate columns. Agencies' activities not inclusive of state programs are to be reported in column 9, other programs. Only column 9 is enterable. Data for columns 2 through 8 carries forward from DMH1. Column 1, agency totals, is calculated by CFRS Web, which is the sum of columns 2 through 9. Column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 should match the respective categories in your financial statements. If there is a discrepancy between the CFR2 and your financial statements, it should be explained through the input on the reconciliation. The CFR2 is required for full and abbreviated CFRs only. CFR2 is not required for Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. Also reported in column 9 are the expenses and revenues relating to fundraising and special events. Note that fundraising special events are not considered agency administration expenses and cannot be reported on CFR 3. And it is expected that CFR reporting of fundraising and special events will match the reporting in your agency's financial statements. Again, and also reporting column 9 are the realized and unrealized gains and losses, management services expenses provided to another provider agency on an ongoing basis. And as stated previously, the provider agency totals reported in column 1 will be compared to your financial statement totals. If the reporting periods are the same, any discrepancies will be explained in the reconciliation. Operating expenses reported on CFR2 are used to distribute agency administration expenses between the CFR reporting programs. Operating expenses include personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, less raw materials. The reconciliation schedule is not required if the CFR reporting period and the financial statement period are different. If a reconciliation schedule is required, it must be completed in order to pass validation. Page 94 of the sample you received shows a reconciliation page. Governmental entities, Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFR filers are not required to complete the reconciliation. For required reconciliation, The amount calculated as a difference in the worksheet should be less than $100 in order to pass validations. Report the sum of total expenses and total losses as reported in the financial statements. Using the additions and subtractions drop-down detail boxes, report the expenses and losses included in the CFR2 that were not included in the financial statements. Common reconciling items may be reported as additions subtractions in the reconciliation schedule, such as elimination of intercompany expenses and revenues, depreciation differences. Differing allowable depreciation methods have been reported in the CFR and statement of activities expense in the financial statements. Other, report any other item differences between the financial statements and the CFR that are not reported as adjustments not allowable cost on CFR 1 or CFR 3. A description should be added with any items reported here. Rounding, any remaining difference between expenses reported on the financial statements and the CFR should be reported on this line. CFR 2A. The CFR 2A schedule must be completed by all not-for-profit and priority providers when financial statements are required to be submitted. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated filers, mini abbreviated filers, and governmental entities. This schedule is used to report data from your financial statements that were submitted in accordance with sections 2.0 and 6.0, and also data from underlying year-end adjusted accounting records that support these financial statements. The purpose of this schedule is to collect data in a uniform way in order for each state agency to have it readily available for provider-specific fiscal analysis as well as industry-wide statistics. Instructions for completing Schedule CFR 2A can be found in Section 14.0 of the CFR Manual. CFR 2A, Section 28, has been renamed to Operating Transactions. CFR 2A, line 28A, is used to report operating revenues and operating gains. CFR 2A, line 28B, is used to report operating expenses and operating losses. For 17-18 and forward, line 33, debt management, and line 34, going concern, have been added to the CFR 2A. CFR 3, Agency Administration. Agency administration consists of the costs associated with the overall direction of the agency, general record keeping and financial management, governing board activities, public relations, excluding those costs associated with fundraising and special events. Direct identification of specific expenses in the preferred method for charging expenses to various functions. Further, indirect costs are those activities or services that benefit more than one project or activity and may require to be allocated. In this case, the allocation method must be reasonable, consistent, and reviewed by management. Some examples include time studies, square footage, actual use, and percentage of direct cost. Note, proper documentation should be retained regarding the methods used. Providers should consult the CFR Manual, Appendices I and K. Full CFR filers report the agency administration costs for the entire provider agency on a single CFR 3 schedule. Abbreviated CFR filers complete the agency administration worksheet in lieu of a CFR 3. CFR 3 is on page 34 and 35 of the sample you received, and this is an agency-wide schedule. The CFR3 is a 3-tab data entry screen. You will see at the top the personal services fringe benefits other than personal services. Second tab, equipment and property, and the third tab, ratio value. The CFR3 expense categories are personal services from Schedule CFR4, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services, equipment, property, parent agency administration allocation. Remember, fundraising and fundraising special event costs are not to be reported on CFR3. They are to be reported in full on CFR2, column 9. If parent agency administration allocation is reported on line 38, documentation of the administration allocation must be sent with the certification schedules. This must include total parent agency cost, total allocated costs to each of the subordinate agencies, and the basis used for the allocation. Section 15.0 of the CFR manual was revised to provide additional guidance on reporting parent agency administration allocation on CFR 3, line 38. Line 6, audit, legal, accounting, includes the cost of other accounting services such as payroll services and CFR audit costs. Line 14, contracted personal services such as management consulting services, IT support, and more. Items with a cost in excess of $5,000 must be listed in the line detail box separately by description and amount. Items costing less than $5,000 each may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $5,000. Costs to develop internal use software during the application development stage are capitalized, not included on this line. And refer to U.S. GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards topic 350-40 internal use software, and refer to U.S. GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards topic 350-50 website development costs. Line 16, insurance general. Insurance costs for general liability bonding, crime fidelity, professional malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to agency administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. The other than personal services, equipment and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. Note, if the total of grouped items is excessive, you may be asked for a detailed breakdown. Line 41, adjustments, non-allowable costs. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line on the CFR3 in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some, but not all non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost of fair market value for all administrative related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5. The amounts entered must be greater than or equal to 0. Line 42, net agency administration is the amount to be allocated using the ratio value method. All data elements are populated by CFRS Web. All calculations are performed by CFRS Web. And calculated values are carried forward to CFR1, CFR2, and DMH1. The CFR ratio value allocation. The total corporate agency administration expenses are allocated to all agency funding sources using the ratio value method. The ratio value method uses operating costs of the program sites as the basis of the allocation. Operating costs are defined as personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and other than personal services, less raw materials. Schedule CFR 3 uses a two-step process to allocate agency administration costs. And CFRS Web completes all the calculations for you. Step 1, total corporate agency administration expenses from CFR 3, line 42, are allocated using each funding New York State agency. Operating costs for programs codes 0880 and 0890 are excluded from the ratio value calculation. Calculation steps. Total agency operating costs are carried forward from CFR 2, columns 2 through 9, to CFR 3, lines 43 to 50, and are totaled on line 51. Line 51 is carried forward to line 53. Net agency administration is carried forward from CFR 3, line 42 to CFR 3, line 52. Line 52 is divided by line 53 to develop the 6-digit ratio value factor on line 54. The ratio value factor is applied to the operating costs on CFR 3, lines 43 to 50 to calculate each funding source's share of agency administration costs, and the allocation is displayed on lines 55 through 62. Step 2, a second ratio value allocation is performed at the state agency level, exempting additional New York State agency specific programs. A list of the program codes not included in the Step 2 calculation can be found in section 15.0 of the CFR manual. A part of the Step 2 of the calculation steps. The second step of the ratio value allocation is done within the New York State agency shares assigned in Step 1, allowing additional specified program types to be exempted. The second step exempted programs are OPWDD program code 0190 and OMH program codes 0860, 0870, 1230, 1690, 2740, 2850, 2860, 2980, 6920, and 8810, and programs with an A program code index. The adjusted ratio value factors are displayed on lines 71 through 77. This is an agency admin worksheet for abbreviated filers, and that is not included in the sample you received. Note that agency administration must be calculated using the ratio value method. You'll enter the total agency administration expenses on line 8, and CFRS Web does the rest. Agency administration final thoughts. All agencies have agency administration expenses. Agency administration expenses need to be distributed to all activities fairly. Ratio value is the required method used to allocate agency administration expenses on the core reports. Ratio value is based on operating cost. In calculating expected administrative and overhead expenses, hospitals should use the most recent available allocation percentages from the step-down derived from the latest institutional cost report, the ICR, for the period submitted to the Department of Health, Office of Health Insurance Program, OHIP, as per Appendix Y. For more information on the CFR 3 schedule, please see section 15.0 of the CFR manual. For more information on agency administration in general, please see Appendix I, section 42.0 of the CFR manual. And refer to Appendix T, section 53.0 for more information on how to calculate agency administration on the abbreviated CFR. That concludes my portion, and I will send this to the next presenter.
Hi, my name is Emily Seward from OPWDD, and I will begin with CFR 5. The CFR 5 is required for all submission types, but Article 28 abbreviated. This schedule is used to report any activity that may be considered a conflict of interest, such as, but not limited to, transactions between family members, a key person of the provider or their relative who has financial interest in the organization, if an individual has financial interest in both the service provider and related organization, another entity has financial interest in the organization, or if the service provider has financial interest in another entity. It should be noted for OASIS and OPWDD providers that the term related organization / and/or individuals is outlined in Article 25.06 of Mental Hygiene Law. OASIS providers should also refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS providers. Further detail regarding accounting standards can be found in Section 18 of the manual. CFR 5 begins with 2 yes or no questions that must be answered. If the answer to both of these questions is no, you are done with this schedule and can move on to CFR 6. If yes is selected for question number 1, you must fill out Section B for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, or else an error message will pop up. The same applies to question number 2. If this is answered yes for OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers, then Section D must be filled out. If not, there will be an error message reminding you. If question number 1 was answered yes, Section B is where the details of the transaction are reported. You must select Add a Line at the bottom of the page to begin entering the details. In column 2, the trans ID will automatically be generated by CFRS Web. In column 3, you must select 3 programs or sites that are affected before you can enter any data into the line. In column 4, you type in the description of the transaction, for example, a property lease rental. In column 5, pretty straightforward, the name of the related organization or individual. In column 6, that is where the relationship to the provider is selected. More detailed descriptions of the options can be found in the manual section 18 in the relationship key. Column 7 is also pretty straightforward. This is the amount of said transaction. Column 8 is the total allowable cost of the transaction, which is the lower of the related organization or individual's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the service or supply. Lastly, column 9 is calculated by subtracting column 8 from column 7. This cannot be entered directly. Lease or rental agreements reported in Section B must be detailed in Section C. The expenses detailed in Section C should be the related organizations or individuals' actual cost in operating the building used by the service provider and not the rental payments made to the related organization or individual. If a space, lease, or rental transaction relates to more than 3 programs or sites or administration, more details should be provided for the 3 most affected programs or sites listed in column 3 of Section B. Again, to begin filling out this section, you must click on Add a Line. In column 2, select the corresponding trans ID from Section B. In column 3, select the programs or sites affected. Columns 4, depreciation, 5, mortgage interest, 6, insurance, and 7, property taxes must all be filled out. Any other expense should be completed in column 8 Other. Any items entered in this column more than $1,000 must be listed in the worksheet separately by description and amount. Any items less than $1,000 may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $1,000 each with the combined total amount. Column 9 will automatically take the sum of columns 4 through 8 for each item. Before moving on to the next section, make sure that any adjustments to allowable costs from column 9 are also reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. Here is a screenshot of where the adjustment to allowable costs from CFR 5 must also be reported on CFR 1, line 66, in the description, adjustment to lease. Section D must be filled out by OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, DOH, and OCFS providers if question number 2 was answered yes, which was that the provider received any financial assistance or if the provider provided financial aid. Column 2, the trans ID will be auto-generated. Column 3 lists the name of the party or individual. Columns 4 through 5 is the address. Column 6, you would enter what kind of financial aid. Column 7, you must select either the funding to or funding from box. And column 8 is the amount of said financial aid. And now moving on to CFR 6. CFR 6 is used to report the salaries given to a provider's board members, employees under the title codes 601, 602, and 603, which are executive directors or CEOs, assistant executive directors and CFOs, controllers or controllers, respectively. Also, any employees that earn more than $125,000 a year, whether through salary or contract. Lastly, the top 5 highest paid independent contractors that receive more than $50,000 a year. CFR 6 is required for all submission types except for Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFRs. If any employees serve on the governing authority, then select yes to the question in Section 1. Please note that this question does not include a non-voting member that is on the board, like a president, executive director, or CEO. If yes for this section is selected, it will prompt the user to input the employee name and their title code. You must hit enter, you must hit add a line to complete. Section 2 is where all compensated board members will be listed individually. If an employee is also on the board, only report their compensation solely as a board member. Also important to note is that compensation does not include stipends or dinner meetings. Continuing on with Section 2, amount paid is pretty self-explanatory, along with contracted payment amount. Any employee benefits like health insurance or retirement that is accessible by all employees must be reported in the fringe benefits column. Any other benefits that may be given out in place of money like awards or loans are reported as other benefits. To report on this line, you must add a line and fill in the description of the benefit in its cash value. Total compensation will total all other filled out columns automatically. You do not need to input this manually. All 601, 602, and 603 positions are reported in Section 3, along with all employees that have a yearly salary that exceeds $125,000, which includes salary and contracted payments. You must click Add a Line to begin reporting. Concerning the annualized salary, it is important to note that the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services, managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, then the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. Here's an example showing CFR 6, column 9, if the other benefit is a non-allowable cost. In this screenshot, Mary Reynolds, the CEO, received money for car expenses that was not given to all employees, thus making it an unallowable cost. This means that this expense will also have to be reported on CFR 3, line 41. Here's another screenshot of where the non-allowable cost of Mary's car expense needs to be listed on CFR 3, line 41. If this was missed originally, you would have to go back and adjust, and on this line, a description in value must be assigned, and also the original line number reference. The top 5 highest paid independent contractors are reported in Section 4. This can be individuals or entities, and the compensation must be over $50,000 to be reported here. To add to this section, you would hit Add a Line, then list the name of the contractor and select the type of contractor in the dropdown and report the amount paid during the reporting period. And that concludes CFR 6. Moving on to DMH1, all CFR types but the mini abbreviated must fill out the DMH1. Also exempt are providers for SED, DOH, and OCFS only programs. The data in the DMH1 is taken directly from the inputted data for CFR1. If you need to change any of the data on this schedule, it will need to be changed on prior schedules. However, for those submitting abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs, the data will not be calculated and will need to be manually inputted. Lines are reported by either program type or program site. The index code and program type together will designate whether a site is aggregated or not. Generally, if only one column is required, enter 00 for every occurrence. If there is multiple columns allowed, enter 01 for the first occurrence, then 02 for the second, and so on. Requirements for filling out the DMH1 include using the full accrual basis of accounting. If you are listing any equipment that is worth equal to or more $500 and has a useful life of 2 years or more, it has to be depreciated on this schedule. For full and abbreviated CFR types, agency administration will be separated by New York State agencies and their programs using the ratio value allocation methodology. Here is a screenshot of the DMH1 in CFRS Web. The 3 tabs or sections of the DMH1 are at the top of the page: program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustments to revenues. Again, for full CFRs, the data will be transferred automatically to the DMH1 when filling out abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated. You must manually fill out this schedule. If additional items over $1,000 needs to be reported on lines 30, 34, and 40, they require more detail. Remember, if you are filing a full CFR, you must go back to CFR 1 to enter this data, then it will transfer to DMH 1. For example, go to line 94 on CFR 1 and you will click on Add a Line on the bottom to input the detailed description and amount. Federal and state grants can be adjusted on lines 78 and 79 on CFR 1 as needed. There are specific lines to reflect PPP money, EIDL, and FEMA grants. If another line is needed, then you can simply use the Add a Line option at the bottom. Here is another screenshot. Lines 1 through 2 are the program type and code. Lines 3 through 5 are the units of service. Lines 6 through 14 are expenses. Lines 15 through 31 are revenues. The lines above will be grayed out if filing a full CFR as shown in this example, and you won't be able to input directly. Lines 37 through 44 are the non-GAAP adjustments to revenue. At the bottom of this schedule is a yellow DMH1 to DMH2 transfer button. It is highly encouraged to use this button to begin the claims section. If needed, the information can be changed manually in DMH2. And that ends the section for DMH1, and I will be turning it over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Emily. When in doubt, use the help function. We believe this will be a useful tool, especially because CFR Web is new to everyone. Within the menu function, at the bottom, you can find the help icon, and a PDF file with the help contents will open in the separate browser tab. You can also click on the help icon next to the schedule name. A PDF file specific to the schedule will open in a separate browser tab. Thank you once again for participating in the CFR training webinar for Fiscal 2022-23 Consolidated Fiscal Report. In case you missed the beginning of the webinar, please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It will help us make things better. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted online shortly. An email will be sent out notifying you of the location. The Q&As will be carefully reviewed and answer will be posted online as soon as possible. Thank you.